Group 1, and these are the members of the group: Jano, Nemenzo, Timio, Recla, Montenegro, Seaholzer, Eleto, and lastly, your guwapong reporter, Skid Brits Rositase. The main objective of this group report is to share our insights about the relationship between heredity and environment and its relation to the physical self. And I will talk about heredity and environment. Heredity and environment. So, heredity and environment are the elements that plays a vital role in determining the personality development of an individual. How a person will develop depends on the environment, but how far a person can develop depends on heredity. So each person has a different pattern of behaviors and personality. That's because they have different environments. So as what I've understood from the research that I have done, a person will adapt to its environment. And my best example of this is Tarzan. So Tarzan lived a normal life when he was young, and one day a jaguar came at their house and slaughtered both of his parents. And Tarzan was the only one left. There was an ape who saw Tarzan and raised Tarzan as her own son. As time passed by, Tarzan adapted to his environment. He started to act wild like other apes do. He started to beat his chest like a king gorilla in order to assert dominance. See, Tarzan is human. He has her mother's eyes and his father's physique, but he didn't act human because of his environment. He was living a normal life when he was young because his parents were civilized, and after his parents were gone, he got raised by apes and did what apes do. So that's my understanding from heredity and environment. People adapt to their environment.
Hello and good day. I am John Leo Ihano and I'm going to talk about dominant genes. One of the most important principles that governs life is inheritance of genes. They code for specific proteins that are responsible for various physical features. These features are what makes us look the way we do. Such features include our height, skin color, eye color, hair texture, and etc. However, they do not just govern our outer appearance, but other features like resistance to certain diseases, intolerance to certain chemicals, and etc. There are two copies of each gene present in an individual's body, with the exception of eggs or sperm. These include one copy of the gene from the mother and one copy from the father. Thus, some of our physical traits are similar to our mother, while some match with our father's traits. These two or more variations of forms of genes are called alleles. So, a dominant trait is an inherited characteristics that appear in an offspring if it is contributed from a parent through a dominant allele. Traits, also known as phenotypes, may include features such as eye color, hair color, immunity or susceptibility to certain diseases, and facial features such as dimples and freckles. So the concept of dominance was introduced by Gregor Johann Mendel. Though Mendel, the father of genetics, first used the term in the 1860s, but it was not widely known until the early 20th century. So normally, individuals have two alleles for one gene, one from their mom and one from their dad. So alleles is different form of the same genes. Like example, eye color is the gene, while green, brown, blue is the alleles. So normally, if an individual carries the same two alleles for gene, they are homozygous for that gene. And this is the case whether the alleles are recessive or dominant. And the other hand, if the two alleles are different, the individual is heterozygous for the gene. Now, I provided some examples for dominant traits. So there are many characteristics of the human phenotype which are controlled by dominant alleles. So dark hair is dominant over blonde or red hair. Curly hair is dominant over straight hair. Baldness is dominant trait. Freckles, cleft chin, and dimples are all examples of a dominant trait. Right-handedness is dominant over left-handedness. The ability to roll the tongue is dominant over the inability to do so. Bright eyes are dominant over blue eyes. And other traits which are not physically visible are also controlled by dominant alleles. For example, immunity to poison ivy is controlled by a dominant allele. High blood pressure is a dominant trait. A and B blood types are dominant over the O blood type. Susceptibility to migraines is a dominant trait. And last, tone deafness is dominant over normal hearing. So let us understand this by a simple example. So let us use alphabetical terms like capital letters for the dominant and lowercase for the recessive. So if capital letter T is the allele for tall height and lowercase letter t is the allele for dwarfism, then the gene for tall height will be two capital letter T's in presence of two copies of the same allele. Or if it's a mixture of a capital letter T and a lowercase letter t in presence of one copy of the allele, it is still the allele for tall height because the dominant trait is always expressed over the recessive. Or the dominant gene is more powerful, that is why it can override the recessive gene.
Hi, my name is Jason Menso. I'm a Group 1. I'm here to discuss about the recessive genes. What is recessive genes? So recessive genes is characteristic that found in a relation between two versions of a gene. So each individual receive one of versions of a gene called an allele from each parent. So if the allele are the different, the dominant allele will be the expressed, while the effect of the other allele called recessive. So each make recessive allele usually weaker. It only shows it both allele are present and always represented with the lower case of letters. So example A, B, F, R. So while the dominant allele is always represented with uppercase of example A, B, F, R. Allele is the different form of the same gene. So it's kind of like a different flavor of variety. So analogy of allele is example Sprite original, Sprite cherry, or Sprite tropical mix. So a gene is the section of DNA which code for a specific trait like eye color, skin color, hair color, or hand size. So gene is specifies which trait, while alleles specifies what from genes take. Example of recessive genes. First is physical characteristics. So many traits of control by a single genes and are either dominant or recessive. So dimple, freckles, cliff chains, and widow's peak are all a dominant trait, so not having their trait is recessive. A person will not have this trait if they have two recessive alleles. So other traits expressed due to recessive genes include attached ear lobes, inability to roll one's tongue, and round versus almost shape and eyes. Next is autosomal recessive disorder. So specific recessive genes are more often mentioned in context of disorder. Or some disorders such as Taysha disease, so sickle cell anemia, and phenylketonuria or PKU are caused by the recessive genes in autosomal chromosomes and chromosomes that are not sex chromosomes. So the Taysha is the disorder that leads to the destruction of nerve cells, and there is no known cause for it. So, individuals with the disease often die by age 4. So, sickle cell anemia is a disorder that results in sickle-shaped red blood cells that cannot carry oxygen efficiently. So, it can result in a pain, anemia, and bacterial infections, and can be managed with folic acid, penicillin, and blood transfusions. So, PKU causes too much phenylalanine to build up within the body and can cause intellectual disability. Next is linked recessive disorder. So, in addition, some disorders are caused by recessive genes on the X chromosome and are more likely to affect male since males have only one X chromosome and therefore do not have a dominant copy of the allele. So, X-linked recessive disorder include the red-green color blindness, hemophilia, and disorder that makes it harder for blood clot and close wound during injury, and the Duchenne muscular dystrophy is which cause of muscular of degenerations. Last is inbreeding depression. So inbreeding, which is the when closely related organisms produce offspring, can lead to increase in determinantal recessive genes being expressed. So this is because closely related individuals are more likely to have the same recessive genes. So when offspring is a population are less healthy and have less of a chance to have surviving to the producing due to recessive genes inherited through inbreeding. This is called inbreeding depressions. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, I'm Ronan Tino, and I'm here to discuss what is physical growth and development. Physical growth refers to the increases in height, weight, and other body changes that happen as a kid matures. Hair grows, teeth come in, come out, and come in again, and eventually puberty hits. It's all part of the growth process. Growth refers mainly to change in magnitude, increments in the size of organs, increases in the thickness of a tissue, or changes in the size of individuals as a whole. Growth may be defined in terms of change, the momentary of change, or the pattern of the changes, the growth rate throughout the life, since each individual has its own total growth pattern. For example, you may stimulate physical development by holding a toddler upright while moving each leg to imitate walking. Eventually, the child will become accustomed to the balance and muscle movements that are required to walk and be able to do it on his own. As infants and toddlers grow, their determination to master movement, balance, skills remain strong. Rolling and crawling occur as infants develop skills in using large muscle groups. Grasping and picking up objects with fingers are signs of small muscle skill growth. So for the physical development, it refers to the advancement and refinement of motor skills, or in other words, children's abilities to use and control their bodies. Physical development is one of the many domains of infant and toddler development. It relates to the growth and skill development of the body, including the brain, muscles, and senses. For example, babies learn about the world as they develop their physical senses of sight, touch, smell, sound, and taste. In fact, babies can hear well before they are born. Newborns like to look at faces and will seek interesting things to look at very early on. An infant can recognize the mother's smell and the sound of her voice within the days after birth. From birth, infants are aware of the world around them, and the ability to grow, develop, and learn occurs quickly as infants begin to explore through their senses. Physical development contributes to cognitive development. As children move and explore the world, they learn about the properties of objects, their own capabilities. In the early years, children are establishing patterns of activities which will affect their whole future. So, what's the difference between growth and development? As we mentioned, one main difference between growth and development is that growth is more of a physical measurement. Development is something that can't be measured in the same way. It's basically another word for progress. And since every child is different, they will progress and develop at different speeds and in different ways. Another difference between growth and development is time development is a lifelong process while growing eventually ends. At some point in your life, the growth spurts stop, yet you continue to develop new skills. Finally, you might think about a plant. It can grow and grow until it becomes taller than you. But you will also be looking for development which would cause it to produce flowers or fruit. This would be the development of its function and abilities.
Hello, and this is Jerwin Berekla to share my ideas about maturation. So, first, let us define what is maturation. So, maturation is came from matured. So, it means it is a process of growing up uh, to reach the stage of full or advanced development. So developing of physical condition. So one of the example of being matured is we aware what is happening right now. Just like we aware of what happened in Russia and Ukraine. So in our mind, we are actually scared of what happens to their country. Unlike the children, they doesn't know what is happenings there. Only the mind in themselves is playing toys, go outsides and coloring books. So one of the sign of being matured uh, is having a career. So being a mature, so we all know uh, that we have our own career. Just like as we grow up, we are making ourselves productive. Just like we pick some plastics, cans for us and sold it uh, to the seller so that we have money. And in adulting, so we have also responsibilities, unlike the children. So they don't have any responsibilities, unlike the brother and sisters older than them. And in maturation, so it will not define uh, what age you are, because some people right now get matured when they got an age of 10, I think, because my cousin was only 10 years old and he knows already how to handle himself. Just like he will he will take a bath because he does not want someone court him, uh, you're ugly, you're not taking a bath. And my cousin is aware of that condition. So that's why, as an age of 10 years old, so he knows already that he needs to take a bath every day. So as we go on, so in maturation, we are aware of what we are doing in every situation, or how we react, or what responsibilities assigned for us, and we are open-minded of everything, because being an open-minded can make a connection to other people, because uh, because we differentiate to the younger, so they don't have an appreciation of what is happening. So first is open mind, so that we can connect to other people. Next is awareness of harmful patterns, in which we are aware of what is happening. Then open communication to other people. So as we get matured, we can create friends, we can create uh, connection to different kinds of aspects of people, just like talking to a professional. So we are already matured, because we know how to handle the things uh, that is that is the proper way. And last is the willingness to have difficult conversation. So as we grow up, so we are going to apply any industries. So in applying, so we already know how to handle ourselves, because handling ourselves is one of the basic qualities of matured person, because handling ourselves is one of the most and the basic principles that we can apply. Only we can focus to our mind. The word, the maturation is, we are aware of everything what is happening in in the world, in our society, and through ourselves. That's all, and thank you for listening.
So, good day. I am Cadet Montenegro, your presenter about environmental factors affecting the physical self. Here are the contents synopsis of this presentation. What does physical self means? Is it important to take care of ourselves? How can we take care of ourselves? Environmental conditioning, with subtopics of social networks, societal expectation, and cultural practices. So let's start by explaining what does physical self means. Physical self is a crucial aspect of the self's one physical features, including the face, bodily structure, height, and weight. However, people should also consider their physical competencies, evaluation of physical worth, state of mind, and perception of beauty. Also, physical self refers to the body, this marvelous container and complex, finely tuned machine with which we interface with our environment and fellow beings. The physical self is the concrete dimension, the tangible aspect of the person that can be directly observed and examined. Let's proceed. Is it important to take care of ourselves? Caring for your body makes sense. After all, you only get one body in this life, and you want it to last as long as possible, right? However, you should know that around the world there is a growing problem of chronic lifestyle-related diseases. These are diseases that are effectively caused by the way that we live ourselves. Most, if not all, of them are associated with not looking after our bodies. Many are associated with being overweight and not taking enough exercise, or by putting the wrong substances into our bodies. How can we take care of ourselves? Looking after the three key areas, there are three very important aspects to look after your body. First is getting enough rest. Second, sleep. Third, eating well. And lastly, taking exercise. That three is very important. Let's proceed on environmental conditioning. As you grow up, you're exposed to environmental influences that shape your physical self, including those from social networks, societal expectations, and cultural practices. Family is being first social group, forms a crucial foundation of your development, including that of your physical self. As you grow older, you get exposed to a larger social group with new practices and standards. As a result, you may begin engaging in acts that would make you attractive and unacceptable to others. Let's get back to the three underlined keywords: social networks, societal expectations, and cultural practices. Social networks. I'll define this meaning. Social networks is a social structure made up of set of social actors, such as individuals or organizations, sets of dyadic ties, and other social interactions between actors. The social network perspective provides a set of methods for analyzing the structure of whole social entities, as well as a variety of theories explaining the patterns observed in these structures. The study of these structures uses social network analysis to identify the local and global patterns, locate influential entities, and examine network dynamics. Proceed. Societal expectations. The term societal expectation refers to the general standards of behavior that individuals who live within a society are expected to uphold. Good manners and common sense are standard example of universal social expectations. Although specific social behaviors differ from one culture to the next, these social expectations are thought by many evolutionary psychologists to exist because they serve as basic rules that allow the social group to function in harmony. So the last one is cultural practices. Cultural practices are shared perceptions of how people routinely behave in a culture. Similar terms used are intersubjective perception or descriptive norms, and values are shared ideals of a culture. Similar terms are injunctive norms, as is, are cultural practices and should be referred to values. To wrap it up, guys, the environmental factors affecting self are social networks, societal expectations, and cultural practices. And that is all. And once again, this is Cadet Montenegro. Thank you for listening.
Good day, sir. This is Jake Holzer from Group 1, and I'm talking about physical self. What is physical self? The physical self refers to the body, the marvelous container and complex, finely tuned machine with which we interface with our environment and fellow beings. Physical activities includes concepts such as physical strength, while appearance refers to the attractiveness and body image. Physical strength. Physical strength is the measure of humans' exertion of force and physical objects. No matter how young or old you are, your fitness goals or your fitness level, physical strength is super important for everyone to have. We use it on a daily basis without even noticing it. As we get older, if we do not keep it, we run the risk of losing full mobility, getting injured more easily, gaining weight, or even leaves us more susceptible to certain diseases. Our muscles play an important role in our bodies. Some wrap around our bones and keep them strong. Overall, working on our physical strength can help us strong and healthy as we get older. Physical appearance. The outward appearance of any person, irrespective of sex, with regard to hairstyle, beards, manner of dress, weight, height,
facial features, or other aspect of appearance. Number 2, the way you look. Why physical appearance is important? It affects the personal development or individuals. Being an attractive person make them sociable and individual are more courteous of them. Physical care. It involves activities that improve your physical health such as diet and exercise. Also means seeing a doctor when you are sick and taking the time to rest. Caring for your physical health might mean eating extra fruit and veggies to fuel your body, as well as staying hydrated. Why is physical self-care important? Clinically proven to reduce or eliminate anxiety and depression, reduce stress, improve concentration, minimize frustration and anger, increase happiness, improving energy, and more. These are the physical self-care examples. Eating a healthy meal, engage in exercise, going for a walk, drinks a lot of water, practice good sleep hygiene, have a cup of tea, sit in the sunlight, and taking a shower or a bath. And that's all for self-care, physical self-care.
Self-concept. This is a report or presentation by Michael Jasper Seleto for a Psychology One-on-One lecture. So what is self-concept? Now self-concept, if we try to divide the two words regarding this, is self and concept, is quite easier to understand, but it is quite deeper than that. It has a deeper meaning and a deeper term of understanding that is required to fully understand this terminology. So let's start by defining the term. Self-concept. The self-concept is a general term used to refer to how someone thinks about, evaluates, or perceives themselves. To be aware of oneself is to have a concept of oneself. So that's actually a good quote. To be aware of oneself is to have a concept of oneself. So basically, being aware of yourself means that you already have a concept of your own, because it takes a certain amount of perception and evaluation of the self to come up with a self-concept. Like for example, my self-concept right now is that I'm a good son, I'm a good worker, and I'm a good brother. These are only a few of the things that I see myself as, I evaluated my action as, and it is affected by my behavior, my historical aspect of myself, and how I developed throughout the years, my traumas, and my mental things. That a lot of things has affected this kind of perception of mine, since it's more of a personal thing than it is more of a reality, because it is affected by a lot of stuff. Therefore it is mainly an individual's point of view of themselves. So that's basically the most basic way of explaining the self-concept. It's how you see yourself or how you perceive yourself. That's self-concept. Now Lewis in 1990 suggests that the development of the self-concept or the concept of the self has two aspects, two of which is namely the existential self and the categorical self. Now, the existential self is the most basic part of the self-scheme or self-concept, the sense of being separate and distinct from others, and the awareness of the constancy of the self. So, a little fun fact about the existential self is that it is usually developed around 2 months or 3 months of an 2 months or 3 months of the baby's existence in the world. Around that time, there's a good example of how to evaluate or understand the existential self is that when a baby smiles and it sees that other people smiles back at him or her, it realizes that it exists. Or for another example is when a baby tries to play around and it pushes a toy away and the toy moves away. At that point on, the baby realizes that it exists in that plane of existence. So therefore, the existential self, being as it's one of the basic part of the self-concept, is that realizing that we exist as a separate being in this plane of existence. So that's basically it. The second one is the categorical self. Having realized that he or she exists as a separate experiencing being, the child next become aware of what of that he or she is also an object of in the world. So at early childhood, kids usually develop this kind of self, or the categorical self, mainly in the way of how we describe ourselves, because kids describe themselves as rather a boy or a girl, tall or small, how old they are, or what the color of their skin is. That's are the those are a good example of how kids identify themselves in the categorical sense of self. Like for example, I identify myself now still a guy, still I'm still a boy, I'm a male. I'm not really quite tall or not small. I'm average height. I'm brown skinned. This kind of concept, or this kind of perception of the self, is rather interchanging throughout the years to come as we grow old. So that's that. But more than that, there are also things that affect self-concept. These are mainly the three things that affect self-concept, which is self-image, ideal self, and self-esteem. This self-image, this is rather a long explanation, but I'm just gonna read some parts of it. This does not necessarily have to reflect reality. Indeed, a person with anorexia is thin, may have a self-image in which the person believes that they are fat. The person's self-image is affected by many factors such as parental influence, friends, and media, etc. Now you can see that how it affects the self-concept, since self-image is basically one of the things of how we see ourselves. But this is not truly factual, because it can be affected by a lot of things, which one of them is kind of a mental illness, or a mental behavior or psychological thing that we are going through. Like for example, in this paragraph is anorexia. Anorexia is a psychological illness which is makes us think that we are fat, or makes a person quite concerned about their appearance in the bodily way. Like if they think they're fat, they think too thin, or that kind of stuff, which result for them to have some kind of eating disorder as well. So those things affect the self-image, and in turn affects the self-concept. Self-esteem. Now we are quite familiar with the terminology, also known as self-worth, refers to the extent to which we like, accept, or approve of ourselves, or how much we value ourselves. So that's a very straightforward explanation of what self-esteem is. It translates to self-worth. So basically, how we value ourselves. It's if we have a lower self-worth or a low self-value, we tend to be depressed, have anxiety, and other type of depression that we kind of develop over time if we have low self-esteem. But if we have a higher self-esteem, we tend to be positive, outgoing, adventurous, and we tend to be happier because we value ourselves more. So we from that description we can understand why it affects self-concept, since it's about ourselves. So therefore, having a certain amount or a certain high value of ourselves really is good for our self-concept, or how we see ourselves. Ideal self. If there is a mismatch between how you see yourself and what you'd like to be, then this is likely to affect how much you value yourself. So this kind of really has a big effect on our self-concept, since we all have an ideal self of our own. Like for example, me, I see myself as a tall, dark, handsome kind of dude, kind of a muscular image, a wholesome person that helps others. But when I look in the mirror, when I wake up every day, I see myself as quite of a loser, a depressed person that barely even have a social life, which is really, really a mismatch from my ideal self. So it affects my self-esteem, my self-worth, and eventually it affects my self-concept as well. So that's really tend to suck, and it presented a certain challenge of which I'm really happy to um, solve eventually through time and learn something from it as well in order to develop a much proper or greater self-concept of my own. Good day. Goodbye.